Hey, what's up YouTube? It's Joey Troy. Today I've got an exciting video for you, even so much so that I put on the collared shirt. We're going to be talking about the iOptron iMate, but we're also going to be talking about a lot of other really cool things going on with the OpenAstro project as a whole. So join me so we can talk about this cool stuff, and I'm telling you, you're going to be blown away just like I was. So let's dive into the video. All right, so you're like, Joey Troy, what is this big exciting news that you have? It can't be that big and that exciting. Well, as you guys know, I've been working on AlpacaBridge. I've been working on it since December, so we're now in June. So that's 7 months that I've been doing development for OpenAstro and just adding more and more drivers to AlpacaBridge so it works with all the devices on the market. So I reached out to iOptron and they're like, they hooked it up, they sent me the device and they told me to keep it and to continue to develop OpenAstro on this device. So I've got AlpacaBridge working on here. It works really, really great, and it's an awesome device. So as you guys know, you can use your iOptron iMate, you can use your ToupTek Stella Vita, and you can also use your ASIR Pros and Pluses. So this is a Plus. I've got a Pro sitting over here in this pile somewhere. There's a Pro in there, or two or three. So basically, I'm trying to take every single small end device that's out on the market and getting it reloaded with Debian 13 Trixie, and then we're reloading. Once we get that reloaded, then we're installing AlpacaBridge so we can run all our drivers for our mount, so we can control everything like our beautiful red cat over here and all the gear that's attached to it. So essentially, that's what's going on. That's the big thing. Or is there more? Oh, there's more, boys and girls. Back here, I've got a series, sorry, I gotta look at the screen so I can see where I'm pointing. I've got the series 2, God, I want to say the 248M camera. God, I'm killing myself. I can't remember all these. There's just too many vendors and too much hardware to keep track of, guys. It's too hard to keep track of it all. But I've got drivers written for the series, we're gonna say the 248M. And then I reached out to Player One and I was like, Player One, I'm doing all this crazy stuff. Do you guys want to help? And they shot over the devices. And I've got now drivers written for their Player One Phoenix wheel. So this works. So thank you, Player One, for sending this device to me so I could get drivers built. But they also sent me a cooled camera. So I've got the very beautiful Uranus-C Pro camera. Now, I'm going to try not to say too much about the Uranus-C Pro, but I can't help myself. It's such a good name, the Uranus camera. My God, I love this camera. So we're going to talk about this camera. So big shout out to Player One for hooking it up. I'm going to dive into the SDK and just explain a little bit about what it does when we set up the camera. So we'll get AlpacaBridge all set up and installed on our iOptron iMate. I'll hook up the Player One camera, and then essentially we'll dive into it. But that's not all. There's more. So I reached out to QHY, and QHY is like, yes, we want to help with this open source project. So they're sending me gear. So I've got gear that's hopefully going to be en route either this week coming up or the week after. So expect some more updates from AlpacaBridge. Right now we're on version 2.02, but I'm going to be moving it up as I get more drivers. So I've got an electronic filter wheel coming, autofocuser, and also the Minicam 8 is my hope that I'm getting from QHY. So I'm going to build drivers for that. But there's more. There's absolutely more. It's crazy, man. So I reached out to ToupTek, and ToupTek's, yes, we want to help with this open source project, Joey. So I already built drivers back here for the AAF and also their guide camera. So that driver should work with all guide cameras that they have. But they're going to be sending me a cooling camera so I can build the drivers for the cooler and then also the dew heater. And then also they're going to be sending me an electronic filter wheel so I can build drivers for the filter wheel. And then potentially another guide camera just to make sure that all the drivers are truly working across the board, but they should be. I use their SDK to build everything. So a lot of exciting stuff going on. So we're gonna dive into the video. I'm gonna show you how to get everything set up with the iOptron iMate. So again, big shout out to all the vendors. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you for helping open source and just going out there and assisting us. So for you guys out there, you know, I'm not getting paid any money for any of this. I'm just saying support the vendors. They're supporting us. It's freaking awesome. So onto the video. All right, we're gonna swing over to github.com/open-astro. Essentially, when you're on this page, you can scroll down and there's a place where you can download the image. Just swing down here, click on the XZ file. I've already got it on my desktop, so I don't need to worry about downloading it. It's 286 megs. It's a real small file to reflash the system. And then essentially, if we go back real quick, it'll explain how to install it. What we're gonna use is, essentially moving forward with all my videos, just to give you an update, I'll be using my MacBook Pro to do all the recordings. So as we're using software, I will try to find software that you can use across the board on all the different operating systems. So we're gonna be using Balena Etcher to essentially flash the image. So essentially, once you've got it downloaded, I'm gonna go ahead and just fire up Balena Etcher. And then essentially in here, you're gonna flash from a file. And then we're going to choose that file, and then we're going to select our target. So I've got my little Anchor USB device, and then I've got a little 32 gig card that I picked up. It's a little itty bitty. So we'll pop in the micro SD card. We'll pop it into our laptop. And then essentially it'll pop up here in a second. Then I'll select the target, use that 31 gig drive, select it, and flash. And then my tippy top secret password. And again, this software will work on Windows, Linux, and Mac, so you can use it on any operating system and then essentially flash this SD card. If you want to know more about what is inside this wonderful iMate, I have a section in here called the iMate H6, and then it's basically got an inventory which explains everything that's in here: the Cortex chip, how much RAM, how much internal storage, the Wi-Fi chip, the Ethernet, the Bluetooth, the GPIOs. So it doesn't take a whole lot of time to write. So once it writes, essentially all we're going to do is just pop in the SD card to the front of the device. So if you look up here in the front, you've got a little place for the SD card. We'll just pop it in there. And then there is no power switch or anything like that. You just plug in a power here, and then essentially the device will boot up. So I'll show you that here in just a second when it's done flashing. All right, so we'll just skip it because I know it's good. So we'll go ahead and eject it. And then essentially in here, I'll take the little SD card. And be careful when you're putting the SD card. I've actually done this before where I've popped it in and it shot across the room. So just be careful when you push it in, you hear the little click. So essentially that's it. The card's in. So at this point, I've got a power cable over here next to me that I'll just go ahead and plug in. And then essentially the device is going to boot up. You're going to see it. It's going to boot green at the beginning. And then essentially you'll start seeing it blink. So I've got all this in the instructions down here. It'll show that it's doing a red, green blink. So that red, green blink means that it's booting from the SD card and essentially loading up the image. And then once it's done booting, which takes a minute because it's Linux, on a little tiny SD card, it'll go solid red. And then once it goes solid red, at that point, it just means it's installing. So we'll go ahead and pause at that point when it's installing, and then I'll resume the video once it turns green, and then at that point it just means the install is done. So again, it takes a second here for this. So there you go, now it's installing. So I'm gonna go ahead and pause the video, and then once it's done, we'll go ahead and continue on. Okay, so it's all done. It's showing bright green, so that means the install is done. So at this point, we just wanna unplug the power, and then we're gonna go ahead and eject the SD card again. Careful with the SD card ejection or it'll shoot across your room. And then at this point, I'm going to go ahead and I've got a network cable here. I'm going to go ahead and plug in the back. So this is connected to my local network here at the house. And then I'm going to just go ahead and plug in the power cable, and then it's going to boot up again. It'll go green, and then it'll do the red, green, showing that it's booting. And then once it's solid red, it'll show that it's running. I changed the LEDs in the image just so that it was red instead of green, because I think red light's better when you're at a dark sky site. So the device is up at this point. So on Windows, you're going to want to use MOBA Xterm. If you're on a Linux or the Mac, you can use your terminal app and just basically SSH into it. I really like MOBA Xterm because MOBA Xterm allows you to scan the network. So if you're on Windows, or I'm sorry, if you're on Mac or if you're on Linux, you're going to need to use something like Angry IP Scanner to scan the network and find it. I like MobaXterm, and it's hard for me to not want to use it. So I spent some time with AI and actually wrote a program called SSH Magic. I'll be releasing this in the Apple Store eventually. I still have some more work to do on it, but it's doing exactly what I want it to do. So on here, you can just click on Scan Network. It's going to scan every single device on the network that's got port 22 open. So we're just going to click on the OpenAstro here. If you go back to the OpenAstro page at the very bottom here, it's going to show the host name that's defaulted with the image, and then your login is just Astro. And then also, if you're going to use the Wi-Fi on the device, it's listed as iMate, and then you can connect to it. In this case, I've got it plugged into my network, so I'm just getting DHCP from my router, which is in the corner. So in here, put in Astro, and then essentially hit connect, and then essentially it's just going to SSH into the device for me. At this point, you want to go to AlpacaBridge on the OpenAstro, essentially on the organization. It's the very first link. So when you click on AlpacaBridge in here, you can click on the wiki. And then on the wiki, I have information on how, again, to load up on your iOptron iMate. If you're using like a Raspberry Pi 3, 4, or 5, it'll work. The 3s are, of course, lower processor, lower RAM. So my recommendation is to use a Raspberry Pi 4 or 5. There's also instructions on how to, again, use the ToupTek Stella Vita. I've also got stuff on the ASI Air Plus, the Raspberry Pi version, this is the actual Raspberry Pi version. But it'll also work on the Rock Chip version, which is the new version that ZWO released. And then also, of course, the old school ASI Air Pro, which is very easy because it's just got an SD card that you can replace the image in. So there's instructions on all these sections, which will explain how to get it all set up. On the iOptron iMate, we're just going to swing over here. And then essentially, the first thing that we want to do is once we're connected through SSH is we want to just do a sudo update on it. So we'll swing over here and then basically paste our command, and then hit enter. It's going to basically ask for the password, and then it's going to run an update real quick and download all the updates from basically Debian. Okay, so once we're in here, the next step that we want to do is we just want to go to apt.openastro.net. So when you go here, it's going to show the current version of AlpacaBridge. Again, this is version 2.0.2. As I release new versions, a new version will be listed here. So in here, we're just going to copy this, and then essentially we'll swing back over and paste, hit enter, type in our password. And then in here, we're going to go ahead and add the repository source, and paste it, hit enter. And then essentially we're going to install AlpacaBridge. So we'll copy it and paste it. And then essentially at this point, it's going to install AlpacaBridge. So we'll go ahead and hit yes. So at this point, we got everything working. It's all up and running. So in here, I'm just going to open up my web browser real quick, and I'm going to go to, in here, you can either use the IP address. So if you're on a Windows box and you know the IP address because you did the scan with MobaXterm, or if you're on Linux and you did the Angry IP, you can use it. Or you can also use the openastro.lan. So I'm just going to go to openastro.lan. And then you're going to go to port 6800. Okay, now that we're connected to AlpacaBridge, we can just click on server info real quick. If you click on the details, in here you can put in your city, state, province, or country, and then save it. All that stuff gets stored through the Alpaca API. One of the big things that I did in this version is, one, I changed the color, so now it's dark. So if you're at a dark sky site and you have to pull this page up, it's not white like it used to be, which would be, it's not conducive if you're at a dark sky site. In here, I've made changes to the log files. So now we can click on view and you can actually view the log files if there was any log files. There is no log files because we haven't done anything yet with the unit. You can download the log files. You can download all the log files. It'll keep track of all the log files that are going on the device. And by default, it keeps everything at the warning. If you need to do debugging or anything like that, you can go all the way to trace and just click on trace and it'll turn on trace. But in this video, we're going to just leave it a warning. In here to configure, this is where it's super easy for AlpacaBridge. So in here is where you configure all your drivers for all your gear. So in here, you'll do a drop down and there's an option for all kinds of different stuff. Right now, the one thing that is not working in this list is the dome. I don't have dome dome drivers written yet. I'm actually working with the Albuquerque Astronomical Society. We have a dark sky site near me, and I've been working on getting our old dome back up and running. So I plan to release dome drivers eventually. So it's on the to-do list, but I just wanted it to be here at least as a pointer. So in here, you can choose your telescope. You can connect to whatever telescope you have. Right now, I've got drivers written for Celestron, iOptron, and then also the older SynScan version 3, version 4 hand controllers. I reached out to Skywatcher. I'm hoping that I can get some gear from them so I can start writing drivers for their new Strainwave mounts, and then of course ZWO mounts. So in here, we're not going to worry about setting that up because I'm not going to set up to a mount today. But in here, you can go to your camera. You can choose your camera. So in here, as you can see, the list is growing. So we've got Player One, QHY, SB Bonnie, ToupTek, and ZWO. Again, I don't have drivers currently for the ToupTek cooled cameras. As soon as I get that hardware from ToupTek, I will be working on that. With QHY, their SDK should work with their guide cameras, but as soon as I get that guide camera, I'll test it to make sure that it works. And then in here, you've got your focusers. So the focusers I have working right now are Gemini, ToupTek, and ZWO. I hope to add QHY in here shortly. And then and I'll try to get some more focusers from other vendors. Hopefully I'm going to share this video with them and say like, hey, look at what we're doing. Look at all these vendors that are stepping up. You should step up. So hopefully this list will continue to grow. In here for the observing conditions, the only thing I have is WeWix right now. So if you've ever checked out WeWix, it's an open source project. Essentially, I wrote. If you go back to, if you go back over here to the GitHub and OpenAstro, there's an actual section in here for WeWix. So I've got WeWix conditions. So these are conditions that you can actually load as a module into WeWix, and then you can, it keeps track of all the conditions and generates like a really cool file. If you go down lower in here, let me go to all the repositories. There is a WeWix SQM. So if you have like an SQM device on your network, wherever your WeWix is at, you can actually, as long as it's the networked version, you can install this module into the WeWix, and then essentially you can control your SQM. And then I also created a WP WeWix for WordPress. So if you use WordPress or anything like that, you can actually install this extension and then connect to the to basically the data, the JSON file that's being generated from WeWix. And then essentially you can create like this nice landing page that I built out. So in here you can see your temperature, your dew point, the wind chill, the wind direction, wind speed, rain, all that stuff. And then it also shows the SQM and how dark the site is based on the SQM. It's also, when you install it, you also install, I can't remember the name of the software now, but there's another piece of software that's in the instructions where you can get like the lunar phase. So it'll show like the lunar phase of the moon, and then essentially it'll keep track of all that as well based on that application, and then just log it in here for you. So really cool. Again, you can do that all with WeWix, but you can also pump in the information into AlpacaBridge in here with the WeWix. So essentially, like when you're using Nina, it'll show like essentially like the temperature and all that stuff. So really cool, and it works great. You just have to put in your conditions underscore dataset JSON file from wherever you're hosting it from your WeWix application. In here, we've got switch, and in the switch, we've got a bunch of switches. So I've written switch drivers for all the devices. So for ToupTek, all the power ports work. For all the ZWO devices, all the power ports work with Nina, and then also with the iMate, the front power ports. Only 2 of them work that you can control because the third one is always on this device. So in here, we're going to go ahead and just choose the iOptron, and then in here, you can just, if you leave it just the way it is right now set up, basically you can turn on and off the power switches from the device using Nina. If you do the PWM and check mark it, it will allow you to change the percentage of how much power is coming through that port. So let's say you had like a dew heater wrapped around your telescope and you just needed to do a percentage of power, or let's say you had a light panel that can handle adjustments with the power. You can adjust the power and basically how much percentage of power that you want to run on those on the light panel. So essentially, I'll just leave on one for the PWM, and then we'll just leave the other port as just a traditional port, which will turn on and off. So we'll just hit add the device, and that's it. Essentially, at that point, it adds the device, it's all set up and it's configured. So next time we reboot this device, any device that we have configured will always be set in here. Again, you don't have to make multiple changes. The only time you really have to go in here is one time to set up your gear, and then only another time as you add gear or remove gear, you would have to go in here and just remove it, and you can just click on it and hit delete, and it'll delete it out, and then you don't have to worry about it. So the other thing I'm gonna do while I'm in here is I'm gonna go ahead and fire up getting the Player One camera. So before I do that, let me just show you the Player One camera real quick. All right, so this is the Uranus-C Pro camera. I'm trying my best not to make too many jokes about Uranus. But it's so hard, Player One. You shouldn't have called this Uranus. Or maybe you wanted to, because you can get a lot of marketing spillage from people just saying Uranus. Like, man, this camera is so awesome, it can shoot Uranus. So anyways, it comes in this cool little black case, and then you can open it up. And then I've still got it wrapped in the plastic just to keep it secure. But this is an absolute gorgeous camera. It's got carbon fiber wrapping on it, so it's just really, really cool. It's a great camera, but I did kind of want to show it off. One of the really cool things in the back is they're using basically USB-C back here. So essentially you can essentially use USB-C instead of regular USB-A. The only downside that I've seen so far with this camera is that it only has just the single device port. So if you've used like a ZWO camera, which I don't have because it's on the back of that device over there and I don't want to grab the mount and all that, ZWO has two ports for two devices. So essentially you can use like your guide camera or your filter wheel or your electronic autofocuser. So in this, it would only be able to control one of those devices from the camera. But other than that, it's a really nice camera. And like I said, the thing that I really appreciated about this camera is that their SDK that Player One is written for this allows you to essentially adjust the how much power you're using for the fan and also how much control you want on your dew. So if it's not a very dewy night, you don't have to use a lot of dew power to control it, so it helps not use as much battery consumption. So again, just wanted to show it off real quick and just kind of give you like a quick brief overview. All right, so essentially at this point, I have the Uranus, that beautiful Uranus camera for Uranus, hooked up to the iOptron iMate. It's not pretty just because, again, I don't have it hooked up to gear right now. So essentially, I'm just going to set this aside real quick. So in here, we're just going to click on configure. And then in here, we're going to go ahead and choose camera. And then we'll choose our vendor, which again is Player One, and hit add device. As long as the device is connected to basically the control unit, be the iMate, the Stella Vita, or the ZWO ASI Air devices, it'll automatically pick up whatever it is that you plug in and turn on. So that's showing up. The next thing that we need to do is just take a quick look and show that it's showing camera index 0. So the next thing that we need to do is add the control unit, which is a switch to basically turn on the fan and also the dew heater. So we'll go back to configure, we'll swing down to switch, and then in here we'll choose Player One. And then under Player One, we just want to make sure that index is associated with the camera. So we go ahead and hit add device. And then at this point, we have the Uranus-C Pro, we've got the iOptron iMate power box, and then we have the Player One thermal switch. So I'm gonna go ahead and fire up my Windows VM real quick. So essentially in here, I've got my Windows VM, I've got Nina on the desktop, that good old MOBA Xterm, and then OpenAstro PhD2 and ASTAP. That's all you need to have installed to be able to control all this. So just imagine this is all hooked up to our mount behind us, which it's not, but essentially in here, we can go to Nina. And then in Nina, I just have a test profile set up, so there's no devices that have been configured on it at all. So I'll just go ahead and load that profile real quick. And then in here, once it's connected, you just do the drop-down menu. Nina is gonna automatically find that camera, so there's that Uranus-C Pro. So we'll go ahead and click on it and connect to our Uranus. I'm sorry, Player One. I love you guys, man. I can't stop it. So in here we can see the Uranus-C Pro is connected. It's going to show the Alpaca version, which is just based on the version of AlpacaBridge, which is version 2.02. So I've got it set up so the drivers are always going to show whatever current version is the AlpacaBridge version that we're running. In here you've got the sensor type RGB, and then it's got the sensor name, which is the IMX585 chip. And then it's going to get your sensor size, and then also the X and Y size, and then essentially everything else in here. So in here, we're going to want to set the default gain. Essentially, I have Player One's website up talking about the Uranus-C Pro, and the default gain is 210 for the HCG, which is the high performance. So in here, we'll just set that to 210. And then the default offset, if none of you guys have used Nina before, this is like what you clip for basically the well. As the well is filling up with data from your picture that you're taking, essentially you can do an offset and set that offset so it clips the offset. So usually I normally set it around 25 just to clip that top, so we're not getting any blown out pixels or pixels that are getting overexposed. The next thing that we want to do is go down to the switch, and then under the switch we're going to see our two switches, the iOptron iMate and the Player One. Essentially first we'll turn on the iMate. In here we can see that DC3 is always on, and then we have our switches. Like I said, I set that one switch to PWM, so in here you can change how much power that port is putting out if you have like a do wrap around your telescope. And then in here we can turn on and off the port. I'm going to go ahead and plug in a light panel real quick just so I can show you what it looks like. So next to me I have a light panel that I plugged into port DC2, so I can turn it on and off and essentially show it. So I'm going to leave it off here, but essentially on my, gotta move it really carefully because I got the camera hooked up, but essentially I have the light panel plugged into the second one, and if I come over here the light panel is hooked up next to me. So again, I'm not going to turn it on to blind the camera, but essentially as you saw, as soon as I turn it on, the light panel turns on and it lights my face. So that is the light panel. So unfortunately, Nina doesn't have the capability of supporting multiple Alpaca switches that I'm aware of. I haven't done any research on it. I just know that you can't connect more than one, at least in the default application. So I'm just going to go ahead and turn it off, and then in here we'll go to the Player One thermal switch and then basically turn it on. In here we can see the fan is set to 50%, and then also the dew heater is set to 10%. Since today it is like 100 degrees here in New Mexico, we do not need a dew heater, so I'm going to go ahead and set that to 0, 0, and then just basically turn it off and accept it so that it's not using the dew heater. And then in here, if we go to the camera, I'm going to bring the Player One up to my microphone so you can basically hear it turn on. So hopefully you can hear that. Let me just, you should basically be hearing that. I'm going to try to put it as close to the mic as possible without banging the mic. And then in here, if we go down to the switch, if we put the switch to 100, and then basically check mark it, should hear the fan kick up a little bit. So this is kind of an introduction of what you can do with AlpacaBridge and essentially Nina. In here, if I had a guide camera, I could go and configure my guider with PhD2. If I had it set up to my mount, I could configure my mount, my rotator, my focuser, and my filter wheel. Again, I'm not going to dive into all this today, but I just wanted to give you a brief overview of essentially the iOptron iMate and then essentially the Player One camera hooked up to everything. All right, guys, that is the end of the video. Thank you for watching. Again, huge shout out to iOptron, to Player One, to QHY, and of course to ToupTek. Thank you guys so much for your support and supporting this project. I'm really excited about releasing new drivers. There's going to be some other content that I'm going to have coming up. As a matter of fact, I just picked up Sky Safari 8, which has Alpaca support. Well, guess what? We can use Sky Safari to drive our gear now with AlpacaBridge. So I'm going to do a video about that. I think that sounds like a lot of fun. So if you like the content, you know, you do you and I'll do me. I'm not asking for any smashes or clicks or whatever. Whatever you guys think, you guys do. It's cool, and we'll meet somewhere in the middle. So again, thanks for your support. Thanks for watching. And until next time, clear skies. We'll see ya.